of things. So our mission kind of summarized is that we promote data-driven community engagement in public policy, and we really try to elevate the needs of specifically local communities to policymakers. So kind of breaking that down or kind of going back to how we identified this. So we kind of identified when you think about the impacts of different crises, so specifically COVID-19, economic downturns, increases in crime, all kinds of different crises that communities have experienced, we found that there were significant gaps in the knowledge of those kind of impacts and how they differ between different communities, such as low-income families and vulnerable communities. We found that, but yeah, we noticed that there was that significant gap in knowledge in terms of how those impacts of these crises are affecting different communities, and that there wasn't micro level data that policymakers and community leadership were able to use to address those complex impacts, specifically community specific data. So when you think about larger level, macro level data, we're not really able to capture those unique characteristics and those differing needs the same way that lower level, community level data is able to. So this is kind of where our framework comes into play and how we kind of develop things. So starting with the micro level data aspect, we collect specifically targeted individual level data. So we do this with surveys at regular intervals, as well as during crises. So we do our survey twice a year, and we've been doing it since 2021. So we're on our about 8th round of the survey. So we aim to collect information that's concerning the secondary impacts of these different crises and how they kind of affect various aspects of individual lives. So when you think about economic downturns, we kind of try and capture the effects of that through, changes to employment, financial security, access to different resources, access to education, access to health, and now we're collecting data on food security. So the survey and all of its questions we designed in consultation with our community partners, and this helps us better understand the complex issues that New Yorkers are facing in a way that is tailored to the needs of community partners' needs and, kind of objectives. So then coming on to strategic partnerships, our survey is primarily disseminated through our community partnerships, and these are usually going to be nonprofits, community-based organizations, the kind of partners who are well positioned to hear from their communities and share the survey with them in a way that they've kind of have the trust of their communities and are able to kind of utilize that. Because ultimately community members are going to be more receptive to the survey when it comes through their trusted partners, as opposed to us as Columbia researchers. We don't really have that same trust and respect of communities to really enter their areas and kind of ask them to hand their data over to us. Again, additionally, it kind of ensures that our data is coming directly from communities and is really representative, as opposed to it being kind of that macro level or, less community specific. And we try and have this data be used for government agencies who can use that targeted data and in turn develop policy and programming that is directly benefiting their constituents. And then finally, when we have finished our survey dissemination, so we usually do survey dissemination for a 2 to 3 month period, we can share those findings and that analysis that we do of the data with partner organizations, with local leaders, and with city officials. And partners can also aid in the kind of sharing of findings, sharing findings with their communities and with their own partner networks. So we make this data readily available across digital platforms, as well as kind of putting reports together for journal articles, and that kind of aids government agencies, local organizations, and researchers to kind of develop targeted programs and evidence-based policy. So a little bit about our current survey, where we're at, and kind of some features of the survey. So we opened the survey. The survey is currently live at the moment, so we are collecting responses. We opened late April, and we're planning to be open until the end of June. We have in the past sometimes extended the survey window just to collect more responses on specific communities that we haven't really found enough responses for, since we really prioritize that kind of interdemographic analysis. We do want to get enough responses for those kind of within demographics so we can do sufficient analysis on them. So there have been times where we've extended that window, but as of right now, we're open until June 30th. The survey is completely anonymous, and all of the data that we collect through the survey is stored on secure servers. So there's no really identifying information about respondents. Respondents are able to provide their email or their phone number if they would like to be contacted in the future for, future surveys, or if they would just like to stay in contact with the project. But there's no information that is collected mandatorily. The survey is also available both online and in paper. So we have the survey kind of through Qualtrics as a survey platform. But we also do have paper surveys that we disseminate at in-person events if needed. We have found that a lot of respondents and some partners really find that their communities are more comfortable with a paper survey as opposed to using their phone or their laptop to take the survey. The survey also has unique partner links. So each of our partners has a identifiable survey link. So any responses that are coming in through your specific link can be directly linked back to you. So this really helps us when we're kind of providing updates to our partners at regular intervals, just like this is how many responses you've collected, this is the kind of communities that are represented, and it kind of bolsters action kind of going down the line in terms of we want to get more responses through a different dissemination method and other things like that. So it kind of helps us throughout the survey window to kind of think about how we want to maybe redirect response collection. And then ultimately, once we've finished collecting responses, we're able to kind of come back to you and provide you a really in-depth breakdown of the kind of responses that you've been able to get. And you're able to use that maybe with sharing it with your community or with, how you kind of go about your programming or the things like that. We also have the survey in a couple other languages in addition to English. So we have it in both Spanish and Mandarin. And again, this is available both in the online survey and in our in-paper surveys. And the final feature about our survey is that we have a topical section. So usually the survey has, most of the survey tries to stay mostly consistent so that we're able to longitudinally look at the survey data. But every round we do have a section of the survey that is unique to that survey round, and it kind of focuses on one topical issue that's really relevant to the city at the moment. So right now we're focusing on food insecurity. So we have a series of questions that are dedicated to, thinking about access to food, affording food, proximity to food, and, the kinds of foods that people are able to access. And we're really trying to think about access to healthy food and, having a healthy diet and what kind of are the barriers to, having a healthy diet and things like that. So we've kind of reworked that section a lot to include a lot of different questions and do a lot of analysis that we think is really important to the city at the moment. But those are some features of the survey. And then the final thing I just want to talk about really quickly is how our partners are involved ultimately in the survey process. So to start, I will just say that we provide a personalized partner package for each of our partners. And this package includes some QR code flyers that you can kind of have displayed in person or you can hand out in person. We also include some social media templates and graphics, as well as some language for social media dissemination. And then we also have a lot of different templates for newsletters and for emails. So just like very standardized language for those kind of newsletter blasts and things like that. But we are also able to provide more personalized materials if needed at any point. But there are a few different ways that you can potentially be sharing the survey. So there's obviously social media, just sharing those social media templates and graphics that we're providing. If you have any in-person kind of regular programming where you have community members coming in or you're having in-person communication with community members, our team members do often come in person to kind of talk to communities and disseminate the survey in person and kind of answer any questions that they might have through the process. There's also obviously your newsletter and your email, kind of just sending a blast to your newsletter members with the languages that we provide. You could also some partners do organize kind of events specifically around the survey where they kind of provide information about the survey and share that with your network and your partners. There's also those QR code flyers that I mentioned, which you can kind of have displayed or just hand out to members. And then finally, there's just using your website, putting up a blurb or a banner that just encourages visitors to take the survey. But that is just kind of a really quick run through of the survey basics and kind of what it does and what our partners do, most importantly. There's an email address that you can contact if you have any questions or if you'd like to talk more about this. And obviously, if you're interested in this, the survey QR code. which you're able to take, or I'm able to send that to anyone who's interested to just look through the survey or look through the paper version. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions as well, depending on how much time we have. But again, thank you so
Sure.
much for um, giving me the time to talk you through this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And we've always appreciated you, being involved with you. And it looks like you're really kind of tight with the organization too, the organization level. And I can see many ways we can work with you on. This might be good for to take over to NICHIP in particular too, and of course the elderly at Encore, and we fill up. We do a lot in the food to kind of alleviate the food insecurity, and so this is very important to us. We take a lot of food and pack it in with the community cupboard and take it over to Encore, and be excellent places for the survey. Any questions for Rainey?
So after the survey is done, how is that effective in engaging, I guess, the powers that be?
Luana, yours that was it, right? Yeah.
How the survey is taken into effect with our elected officials and so on and so forth. I mean, after you do the survey, what's the results?
Absolutely. So we do, in terms of elected officials, we do work directly with city council members. So city council members are involved with the survey dissemination. So that kind of helps us with getting those specific responses from constituents. But once the survey, is completed and we have the results, we kind of put that together really quickly into kind of infographics, one pagers, kind of quick little materials that we can use for just kind of sharing results. And those we're going to share back with our partner organizations, we're going to share with local leaders, we're going to share with those city council members. And then in turn, those kind of everyone is able to, within their own means, kind of share those results with, be it their community members, be it their constituents, be it at a larger scale. We've done presentations for city council, or we've kind of done like speeches and presentations. And we do published reports, usually 1 to 2 a year, on specific issues. So last year we did a couple reports on childcare and on food insecurity. And those kind of reports do ultimately get published and become more accessible in terms of data on these issues. Um, and yeah, ultimately, we use all of this in our framework to also inform other cities. And we are trying to kind of get this framework up and running in other cities in the country so that they can disseminate the survey within their own means and kind of get that same kind of policy actionability at the end of it.
Great. Nice work, Harini.